gents, for the purposes of time, we would like to kickstart the new session. You would have noted the previous session, though incredibly insightful and fruitful and beneficial to all, it did, however, eat into the time of this particular session, leaving us with the responsibility now of pedaling and cycling as fast and as quick as we can to make up the time. Selector, I'm not too sure if I'm audible at the back. Am I good? Am I audible at the back? Fantastic. Thank you. We'll just wait for the colleagues at the back to close the doors behind them so we can get started. One more door closed, two more to go. Door number 2 in the process of being closed, and the third door being closed, and now we're ready. I nearly said now we're ready to rock and roll, but that would not be appropriate. I don't see no dance floor, so we can't exactly rock and roll, at least not yet. Maybe after the session. Honorable Newo Muchato Mutiane, Minister of Public Works and Transport of the Kingdom of Lesotho. Honorable David Mahlobo, Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation of the Republic of South Africa. Distinguished guests, panelists, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Luphumlo Ngayisa, and I have the immense pleasure of facilitating this session. There are very few infrastructure systems more fundamental to a functioning of a society and its economy more than water. Behind every reliable water supply is an extensive network of engineers, hydrologists, scientists, technicians, plant operators, municipal officials, regulators, policymakers, financiers, and development institutions. Much of their work is unseen. When it does well, we open our taps and voila, the water flows. That simple acts on protected catchments, reliable storage and conveyance, treatment works that perform, infrastructure that is maintained, wastewater that is effectively managed, and institutions capable of financing and operating these systems over time. To the people responsible for the hard work, and I'd like to think that some of you are here in this room, we owe you a great debt of gratitude. And if you are part of this value chain, I'd be thrilled and delighted if you were to indulge me by clapping and giving yourselves a massive round of applause for the transformative work that you continue to do. And yes, it is a thankless job, because ultimately, if I'm at home, all I want when I switch on my tap, I desire for the water to come out. And if I'm running a factory and I'm dependent on the water, I want that water there. We tend to care very little about what happens behind the scenes and how do we ultimately get to that water towards the end. And I think it is in that spirit that I felt it opportune and necessary that I speak on behalf of all of us in saying thank you, thank you, thank you for the thankless job that you do. We don't have the luxury of time, as you can imagine, so we're going to try and get into our program and run with it as quickly as we possibly could without losing the ethos and the crux and the substance of why we are here. With your permission, therefore, I'm going to now call upon our Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation of the Republic of South Africa, Honorable David Mahlobo, to come and give us just a few highlights. I'm not going to control you, Minister. I'm not going to say to you, DM, you only have 2 seconds or 5 seconds. I know that you are a man of discernment, and I know that you're a man who respects time. Over to you, DM. Thank you. A big round of applause for our Deputy Minister.
Thank you so much, Luphumlo, for being a marvelous program director. To His Excellency, our Minister from the Kingdom of Lesotho, Godi Tabeng, to the guests that are here, and to my sister, the Member of Parliament, Ms. Kobe. She's a member of the Portfolio Committee of Water and Sanitation. Very briefly, we are less than 5 years just to be at the year 2030. We do have a global commitment that by 2030, the SDG goals must be achieved. As we stand here today, many countries are struggling. They are not going to achieve the SDGs. Recently, I'm from New York with Minister Machudina, where we're accounting on the progress South Africa is making. But equally, we're not going to be able to achieve the imperatives of climate change in terms of Paris Agreement. The world is involved in a number of challenges, geopolitical tensions, the issues of supply chains that are being disrupted. Climate change is an issue. Commitments that are being made by a number of countries, they have not been fulfilled. Those funds, whether green bonds or blue bonds that are being promised, there is nothing that is happening. But what has to happen? There is too much diagnosis. What should we do? One of the most important aspects is a question of leadership. Last year, the African leaders, they made a choice that Africa, in terms of the underinvestment on water and sanitation, there is a gap of $30 billion. We then decided, as part of Africa Investment Program, we convened here last year in Cape Town under the leadership of President Cyril Ramaphosa, Minister Phumi Machudina. We were able to raise bankable projects, working with our partners, about $12 billion. But the gap is still huge. When you look at the gap globally, just to deal with the question of water and sanitation, it runs to about $7 trillion. That's how big is the task. Africa has provided leadership. After we did this particular event last year, we're then able to have a meeting of heads of states and government in Addis. For the first time, the AU has declared the year 2026 the year for water and sanitation. And our leadership taking the issues to the global stage, the UN has agreed. We're going to Abu Dhabi in December. We've agreed that this is a year in which water is going to be a main issue for discussion, not just as part of the menu on the table. Very, very good progress. And in terms of leadership, South Africa has been bestowed to lead the issue of co-chairing of the UN pillar on the question of infrastructure and investment. And my minister, Comrade Phumi Machudina, is leading that. We're supporting that particular aspect. And in South Africa, we do have our own challenges. For the first time, the matter is a priority for government, is led by President, and he chairs a presidential committee on water and sanitation. The issue of leadership is important. But when you look at the layout, there are two components in water. Is water security. Will you have enough water? Then there's issues of water supply and sanitation supply and delivery. In our own country, we're a water scarce country and a region, that's why His Excellency from Goditabeng is here. One of the things you can learn is regional cooperation. We share the rivers. There's Orange Sengo, Lesotho, Namibia, Botswana. We work together. On the other side, there's Inacom. We work with Mozambique, Swaziland. Those are the rivers we share. We're a water scarce region. But South Africa, I can assure you, with the model of regional cooperation, we can be able to appreciate, we can unlock economic growth, issues of social security, environmental security, and all these other aspects. Come to SADC and learn, rather than the situation that nearly happened in our continent, where the Renaissance Dam nearly caused problems between 3 countries, of which we're trying to resolve that because there's shared growth and aspiration for the Africa we want. In South Africa, investment in water security infrastructure, I can guarantee you, as you sit here, our water supply, assurance of supply or availability is around 95%. but with localized deficit. We're not going to run out of water by 2030, but we need to unlock major national water resource infrastructure projects. Working with our partners, Lesotho Highlands now is on phase 2. We are more than 57%. Strong engineers, South African engineers, Basotho engineers, best bridges, most of these things, they are being done from planning, design, and execution. The Polyhali Dam will deliver water in South Africa in the year 28-29. Currently, the Basothos are giving us around 780 million cubic meters per annum. Then when we add these new dams that is going to be built, the Polyhali Dam and the tunnel, we'll get about additional more than 480 plus million cubic meters. The ultimate will get more than 1.27 billion cubic meters from Basotho. But it's a win-win. They are benefiting on hydro. We're paying for that particular water. Currently, we're looking at getting water to Botswana, from Lesotho through South Africa to Botswana, so that we can grow our economies. And it's an opportunity for investment. As we speak right now from Zimbabwe, you go to Beitbridge, we're bringing water to Messina. There are those particular initiatives. Eswatini and ourselves, we've built a dam, Mozambique, dealing with those particular issues. But the capability to ensure that these national water resource infrastructure are well funded, we have water security. I can assure you now that most of these projects that are economic projects are funded off the budget. We have about 80 of them. They are costing us at a region of 140 billion rands. We can look here in the Western Cape, Clan Williams Dam, back on track. Farmers are going to be able to move, do their export. You go to Mpumalanga, there's Loskop. You go to Limpopo, there's Sanini Dam. Upgrading of these dams, unlocking the economies and the potential of our people. But for us to be able to raise the finances we need, we have to do de-risking. The de-risking part of it, you need to have a proper institution. We create an institution in terms of the law called TCTA, Trans-Caledon Tunnel Authority. We bring water through tunnels. You protect it from evapotranspiration, from pollution and other issues. They've been able to raise the money and the bonds from the market, and they have never defaulted. But because of the challenges we're going to face, the population has grown, the GDP demands has grown, then the issues of climate change will need more money. We're able to bring all our resources together into a new institutional framework called South Africa's National Water Resource Infrastructure Agency. It has the capability to do construction, but it can raise the money from the market. That's how water security in our country looks like in terms of surface water. Groundwater, we're doing more exploration. It has the capability for communities. It's not of an inferior quality, but also the issues of seawater desalination, technology to address the question of the additional yield where the water will come from. Here in Cape Town, you go to KwaZulu-Natal, we do have desalination plants. The way challenges before, the technology was expensive, management of the brine was an issue, but also the issue of power availability. And the power issue has been resolved, and it's an issue where we can have independent water producers that in the coastal line, they can be able to generate water. The new economy is called water reuse and reclamation. Wastewater treatment works, the effluent, what you find underground in terms of mine water, we can reclaim it, and the technologies are there. The last two issues is water supply and sanitation supply and reliability. Our country has moved. Access is now more than 91.3% with the associated benefit. However, regression has happened. Municipalities, in terms of their delivery model and their capacity, that model can't work right now. The reliability is down to 67%. Nationally, non-revenue water is high as 47%, and that's why the president has declared this issue a national crisis. Experienced by communities, the ability for business to be able to do that. There is an institutional framework on how are we going to resolve the problem. We are deploying our water boards, very strong one in the continent and in the world. They are using their off-budget rand water, raising the money through the markets, about 35 billion rand, about 10 projects. I'm not going to speak about them. We are using blended finance. You saw some of those projects, whether it is the Oliphant Sport, Ebenezer, where Infrastructure SA assisted us. We are looking at non-revenue water that are being done. And all our projects in totality, we have a structure called Water Partnership Office. From a planning point of view, mobilization of the capabilities that are there, ensuring that the issues of de-risking are being taken care of. 80 projects are there, and they are going to cost us about 60 billion rand. But it is blended finance. In terms of blended finance, we are the biggest beneficiary since it was introduced. Out of the 43 billion rands that they've raised, we are having about 26.8 billion rands water-related projects. But in terms of getting private sector to come on board, they are going to give us about 23 billion rands. That is very massive. Then there is a private sector financing. Mines and other sectors have come on board because for their investment to be able to move. In Limpopo, we have something called Oliphants Management Model. We're working with the mines. They will take water from the Nebo Plateau. It will go to Pulogwane until it to Mkhalakwena. We are putting about 30 billion rand. The economic component will be raised from the market. As a state, the social component were coming through. We go to Mkomas in KwaZulu-Natal, 53 billion rand. There are a number of these activities that are there. We're also looking at green bonds and blue bonds. An example of wastewater systems and how you can bring in efficiencies. Working with Rand Merchant Bank, we've been able to put some funding that is there, about more than 2 to 3 million rands as a seed funding. That will be able to generate more than 2 billion rands. These are some of the options that are there. But one of the issues we have to do is institutional model. The delivery model can't continue in South Africa as it is. That's why the idea of local business enterprises, whether you call them trading services, is the way to go. A proper board, a proper accounting system, the kind of capabilities that are there, end to end, whether you use performance-based contracts, whether you use concessions, whether you use SPVs, this is the direction we do. But there is politics. The politics is whether are you applying new liberal policies. Water knows no boundary, it knows no ideology, it knows no dialectics. We just have to deliver water. And our reform model, it says the asset ultimately will remain a public trustee. But who delivers the water, it doesn't matter. Because as long as the state will manage issues of affordability in terms of your pricing strategy, your user charges that you are producing. Therefore, the idea of an independent economic regulator from the entire value chain, whether it's a developmental charge, it's a bulk charge, whether it's a retail charge, that's the route we're trying to do. In South Africa, there are people who normally disturb projects. We have an element to deal with issues of vandalism, malfeasance, and corruption. Because the kind of technology we use, many people, they steal ferrous and non-ferrous material, causing damage to infrastructure, taking us back around those particular issues. That issue is being attended to. The last point, whatever we do, we must build resilient, water-sensitive, and climate-sensitive communities. We don't leave communities behind. Partnership with indigenous people, traditional leaders, business, labor is a way to go. And South Africans have a duty to change their behavior with respect to their relationship to water and environment. We don't have plenty. When we look at the number of liters used per person per day, it's too much. It's closer to 270 liters per person per day. It has to come down to 173. There are those who are actually wasting more water, but we know from the example of Cape Town, we can hit them in the pocket in terms of the tariffs while we are protecting the poor. That's why I thought the biggest matter we should summarize in that particular way. But I'm very confident with this arrangement of a whole society approach, the whole government approach, leaving no one behind, we shall stabilize water supply and sanitation, reliability, and sustainability in the next 2 to 3 years. And the reforms are starting to give us the results. But when it comes to water security, there is no crisis. I thank you.
A big round of appreciation there to Deputy Minister David Mahlobo. And you would have noted he is ever so animated when he speaks about this subject as a subject that's been closest to him for the longest time. And he's had the rare privilege of enjoying the front row seat of our water journey. He truly and really is an enthusiast of the subject matter, and we hope that when he leaves politics, I'm not going to say when, in terms of time, that he would actually go back and assume a position as someone who could provide direction, either in the form of a professorship through a university. But I've never had the opportunity to tell you this, DM. Even in my days when I was still at COGTA, it was always awe-inspiring whenever you would come and make those visits. It's encouraging to know that at least if anyone in the room was at some point doubting our state of water security, it's encouraging to hear that we are in good hands. A big round of applause once more. DM, you made mention of a few things. I love what you said about water knowing no boundaries and knowing no ideologies. I also picked up on the emphasis that you made on the importance of regional coordination and the partnerships. And I have to admit that our region already gives a powerful of this. If you look at which you also mentioned, the Lesotho Highlands Water Project, I mean, it stands as an extraordinary feat of engineering and regional cooperation, which connects Lesotho's water resources and hydropower generation with the long-term water security for South Africa as our economic heartland. If you go further a bit, you go to Mozambique. The Kurumana Dam and Greater Maputo water supply system also demonstrates another dimension of the same proposition, which speaks to issues of investment in storage, treatment, and bulk conveyance, strengthening once more the water security of a major urban and industrial economy. I'm now, ladies and gentlemen, going to invite His Excellency, Honorable Neo Machato Mutiane, who is the Minister of Public Works and Transport of the Kingdom of Lesotho. A big round of applause as His Excellency makes his way to the podium. And before you start, His Excellency, thank you very much for the water.
Program Director, Honorable Ministers, Your Excellencies, the Executive Mayors, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. All that needed to be said about the subject has already been said by the Deputy Minister. So what I must then deal with is to deal with trying to help us understand this water security and water cooperation issue. But let me start with a number, because numbers usually help us. I come from Lesotho. Most of the water in Southern Africa comes from Lesotho. No wonder, Deputy Minister, that we also visit you in numbers that you would rather not deal with as we coexist. So the Orange Sinku River Valley system is important. It consists of a series of dams along the Orange River, which runs from the northeast down into Namibia, into the Atlantic Ocean. At some point, as the river flows and as it leaves Lesotho, it's actually only 120 kilometers from the Indian Ocean. So had the Creator taken the decision, and the easiest decision was to direct the water into the Indian Ocean, the bulk of South Africa would actually be more arid than it really is. So the water and the river will tend southwestwards at a point where we currently have Vanderkloof Dam. That journey from Vanderkloof to the Atlantic Ocean will lose about 600 cubic meters of water every single year to evaporation and other riparian uses. This is not to a user. This is not to a city. This is not to a farmer, simply to the environment and the atmosphere. Let that blend, because all the efforts that we undertake as a region is probably could have been compensated if we could transport water over a long distance and not lose any of that water to the environment and to the atmosphere. Let's consider what that means. So in every ordinary year, the Senqu River in its journey surrenders the same capacity of water as Lesotho Highlands Water Project gives to Gauteng. Again, maybe the solution, if the Creator had created differently, the potential for Gauteng to be what it is would not have been, because it would have been uninhabitable. So that we, the two countries, South Africa and Lesotho, have spent billions through the Lesotho Highlands Water Project, building a series of dams, transfer tunnels into South Africa, and alongside them, silently, the same volume of water rises and disappears and not sustain any life. This pattern is not a Lesotho problem. It is not a South African problem. It is a regional entry. It is a regional entry that no single national treasury has ever been asked to account for. Across our continent, it seems that our water sources, our centers of demand, and our national boundaries do not always coincide. Therefore, we must look in looking at water beyond isolated national systems. And I think that's what the Deputy Minister has made that point. Countries sharing rivers and catchment should consider how they can jointly protect and own our water sources. Protect the water itself at source, reducing losses in quantity and quality while distributing it more efficiently. That's a slight mind shift. Lesotho Highlands Water Project and any subsequent projects, and the projects that the Deputy Minister is talking about, in essence, should be seen as regional assets, not individual nationalist assets. So and then we would have to finance that, and we would have to pay for it, and how do we best to do that? But in the interim, while we are trying to sort this out, who bears the cost of an inefficient regional water system? As has been said, it's the municipalities and the citizens who have to pay for the water. Remember, we started off with a large volume of water we are losing. As we lose that water to the environment, that becomes an operational cost. As we move the water from as far away as 400 kilometers, in the case of Lesotho Highlands Water Project currently, the quality of that water depreciates. So somebody sitting somewhere in the municipality has to re-engineer our water through abstracting it, through putting chemicals through it, so that it's a better quality that's fit for human life. We need to find that solution. We also need to look at what we lose in our conveyancing of water. Your own Deputy Minister, no-drop reporting stats indicate that you lose 47% of your water because of the losses you incur in transmission. I don't refer to this figure because I want to criticize you, because we probably lose more water than you do, of dilapidated systems, of lack of maintenance, and all those issues. But the real question before us is simply how do we finance, or it's not simply how do we finance water. It is whether as a region we can shift the expenditure from this perpetual operating costs towards a more cost-effective, jointly owned capital for the region and not for a specific country per se. So as Lesotho Highlands Water Project, you've quite eloquently demonstrated what the stats are and so on. But we need to look, and we are looking as a country. Again, it was a result of a conversation that was held at a very high level to say, why then must we be paying Basotho for the water? And that's simple answer. It's because Basotho have water at the right altitude and at the right temperature. I can see there are engineers in here, a particular one gentleman who is looking and seems to understand that in the area that I've referred to is as where we are losing most water in this river, in the Orange River Sinqu system. About 2,600 millimeters a day is lost to evaporation. So the decision to have water, and in our mountains where the water is cold, the loss is a fraction of that number. So the trick is storing water high, is really not a hydraulic decision. It's a strategy regions have to adopt in order to deal with evaporation. So it's an evaporation strategy. The paper here says I must be precise about what I mean, but I won't be precise because the minister has been very precise. But at the moment, I can confirm that we are able to deliver 800 million cubic meters a year across the current phase 1 of the Lesotho Highlands Water Project was completed. We are looking at phase 2 that will increase that capacity, provided we invest in creating bigger pipelines to be able to do that. I just remind you the entire Lesotho Highlands project was conceived in 4 phases, and the 2 governments have opted to go for 1 phase. It probably was not the best decision, and it's a decision that as we go forward and negotiate the terms of the Lesotho Highlands Water Treaty, which should start soon, we should really be looking at it. But I think the trick will always be to extent to which we can potentially own this asset as the 2 countries. So I propose that Southern Africa as a whole, we should always investigate possibilities of shared capital infrastructure model for water based on the following principles: that we will protect the quality of water at source. It is always cheaper to keep water clean than to clean it later. A principle that my grandmother had no difficulty understanding. It means every milligram of sediment that we can prevent from entering a water system will mean less chemicals that we'll use in treating that water to make it suitable for human consumption. The other issue which talks to our altitude, we must attempt to design systems that will help us to convey water under gravity wherever alignment allows. Again, I've been warned to say to the engineers that will be present in here that altitude is a national endowment, but gravity is a product of alignment. So therefore, we can never talk truly of a gravity-fed system. We must talk of gravity-assisted conveyancing in order to reduce the lifetime of the lifetime pumping energy of a system. It is the energy which is the largest contributing cost in any bulk water supply over a long distance of time. We must treat water closer to the demand, but ensure that the systems allow us to deliver to that demand as cheap water in a cost-effective manner. This way would allow in this regional system for the national standards of any particular nation to apply in treating the water and not try to apply the systems where nobody really takes the responsibility of paying for. And finally, this has been made. The region needs to think about sustainability. The use of grey water, it's a standard in most countries. It's something that as a region, as citizens of Southern Africa, should take seriously. We definitely do not use enough grey water. We should, in this regard. What we've described as a regional approach is really not a thought experiment. The demonstration does exist. So we don't need to really imagine this model. 4 of our governments are already enthused about it. The Lesotho-Botswana Water Transfer Project is being currently executed. I'm advised that at the binational between President Gideon Boko and the Republic of South Africa and Matamela, the issue was discussed and it was decided this should not be Lesotho-Botswana Water Transfer Project, but this should be Lesotho-Botswana, should be Lesotho-South Africa-Botswana Project. You know how we quickly find acronyms for that. So we are now talking about LESAWA. This will enable the Republic of South Africa not to only create passage, but should also look at ownership of the system. And this way would make it more feasible to put together than if Lesotho and Botswana were going at it alone. Pre-feasibility phase for this scheme is complete. The technical studies for the dam are complete. How the water conveyance system will work has been studied. The environmental and social assessments are done. The financial and legal framework are yet to be concluded, and we are looking at mid-2027 for that. A project office has been established. So again, the concept that we were discussing in here, that some projects are not user-ready, but they are nice concepts. We've certainly, as the 3 nations, gone a long way to ensuring that this happens. So my invitation to you this afternoon is to treat this project as a Southern African proof that shared water capital to help us take it to financial close. So the time we have now and the next summit, I should be standing here saying that was now completed. We are sitting at commercial close and we are moving on. I met a few colleagues now, and they said, we're studying this project from the Botswana end. Someone saying we're studying this from the Lesotho end. The system may have a beginning and an end, but I think the principle is that it should be co-owned. Who gets to pay for this? Clearly, as has been demonstrated, no treasury, except I think the Deputy Minister said he's got enough money to to do this, so we'll just wait for them. I said, no single country will be able to do this, so we have to think. We have to separate, I think, investment into ownership, investment into project costs, and the benefits arising out of this system. Certainly, the demand in Lesotho is not sufficient. The demand in Botswana is probably not sufficient, but the demand taken over the 700-kilometer conveyancing route of this scheme will make it possible. We must be serious and make sure that the revenue line is built and is understood. Our experience with Lesotho Highlands Water Project is that if arrangements and agreements, purchase agreements are done, properly structured, faithfully honored, that will be able to convert a public scheme of this nature into an investable asset. We have something rare here. Nearly 3 decades of Lesotho Highlands Water Project has demonstrated that given countries cooperating, that is a regional asset or a basis for a regional asset, or the creation of a regional asset of this nature has a payment record. Of course, the other components need to be dealt with, such as how do you combine your sources of investment. There are elements that are suitable for social upliftment that probably need to be financed through those who finance social upliftments better. There are technical aspects, such as those that are commercial by nature and need to be treated accordingly. Of course, ultimately, no matter how sophisticated a system we create, is going to mean nothing if it's not affordable. Not affordable at the end, but also affordable at the source. And most of the Lesotho Highlands Water negative claims arise from the perception that in the past, the improvement and quality of life has been dealt with correctly at the source. And those are just some of the areas we need to. Again, I should have gone a little bit more, but the minister has helped in this regard. So, you cannot treat us or any source country as being a water security or a secure a secure water source if in that region its villages, its citizens are still queuing up to get basic services. It's a total upliftment of the communities around the source, around the system, that will make the system work. So what do we ask of this meeting, of this summit, is that all of us, Infrastructure South Africa, development banks, the new development bank, any other interested parties, you engage directly with us through Orasacom so that the Lesotho, South Africa, Botswana project moves beyond feasibility into pre-investment work next year, and that this reach financial close soon. We have the capacity, as the Minister indicated. The 40 years experience we've gained at Lesotho Highlands Water Project has positioned us to be able to implement the next project. And we need to adopt a principle that in Southern Africa, water infrastructure of regional consequence should be prepared, financed, and owned globally. Program Director, please allow me to close. We are well known for diplomacy in Lesotho. Our founding father learned the trick of existing surrounded by powerful adversaries. We've recently adapted the case of the Kingdom of Bhutan that also survives on water stored, on cold water stored at the right altitude to provide life into parts of China as well as India to power their industrial needs. Thank you.
Another big round of appreciation for His Excellency Neo Machota Motiane, the Minister of Public Works and Transport from the Kingdom of Lesotho. One couldn't help but notice and in fact be reminded of the profundity and necessity of African solidarity in how we can maneuver and negotiate our way around these challenges that are facing us. It was also quite interesting, Minister, that you raised beyond isolated nations, or that rather that countries carrying river catchments should look or perceive themselves and position themselves to see beyond isolated nation systems, and rather look at what, and not look at what they have as individual assets, but as regional assets. I think that is quite profound, because if we don't, we stand to perish. I think that on its own deserves a massive round of applause, and it speaks to the importance of African solidarity. The thing about, in marketing, we talk about how a product, as strategists and behavioral scientists, you will all gather and sit and think that this is how we're going to break into market and this is how we're taking this. But products are known to have a life of their own. The same goes with conversations. These conversations are often structured. There's a structure that's in place. There will be questions that would be thrown around. And I am now going to go back and wear my marketing hat and say, we are going to put the script aside. Having listened to the two presentations that we've just received, I have no doubt that you as practitioners in the room have a lot of questions to ask. And I think those questions deserve to be entertained and interrogated and answered satisfactorily. So I'm going to try and create more time for that conversation. But assisting us in that conversation I'm still going to call upon our esteemed panelists who would also add their meat and weight to the conversation, starting with Mr. Johan Lube, who is the head at Water Partnerships Office of the Department of Water and Sanitation, which is housed at the Development Bank of Southern Africa. Let's give him a round of applause as he makes his way to the front. Mr. Lube is followed by Mr. Americo Okua Demande, who is the Director General in the Ministry of Public Works, Housing and Water Resources in Mozambique. Big round of applause for him as he makes his way to the front. Joining the list of the esteemed panelists and experts on the subject matter is Ms. Logashri Surenarian, who is the Chief Executive Officer at SMEC South Africa. We also have the Project Management Unit Director at Badiramogo Water User Association, Mr. Sekgomotso Kilifetswe. And last but not least, we also joined by Dr. Myers van der Walt, who is the Managing Director at, for Water at Bigen. To the panelists who've just joined us, let's give them a nice warm round of applause. I know it's this time of the afternoon, and I know that time-wise we're not doing well, not to the fault of our own, but we're obviously trying to manage the little bit of time that we have effectively. Welcome, colleagues. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to just do a quick round where you get, can people see you? Are you hidden there? Oh, most of them can. All right. I'm going to give you just a few minutes just to introduce yourselves effectively and what you do in your respective organizations, linking it to why we are here now and why you've been tasked to come and contribute to this conversation about innovative financing models for sustainable water infrastructure. We'll start with you since you don't enjoy much visibility in this corner over here. Has someone, can we share mics? Thank you. If we can get an extra mic, we would be highly pleased. Is there one on the seat? There should be one on this. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Selector.
Tick, tick, tick. Yes, I think it works. Yes, good afternoon, colleagues. Myers van der Walt. I'm from Bigen. I'm the Managing Director for the Water and Sanitation Directorate. And we are basically doing everything related to developing water and sanitation infrastructure across the country and many parts of the continent. We're also involved in raising finance for some of these projects. And yeah, we've been doing that for the past 50 years.
So there we go, finance, all finance-related questions, and we were told throughout the overarching theme, having gone through other panels, His Excellency, there keeps coming that finance money is not an issue, unless I have not heard correctly. But we kept on being told that the capital is available. And I guess the big question is then how do we access that? And I suppose if there are any other finance-related matters, you now know who to direct them to. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, and let me stand on the protocol that is already established. And I am Sekgomotso Kilifetswe from Badiramogo Water User Association. We are implementing the 25 billion Oli Funds Management Program that the Deputy Minister was talking about. It's based in Limpopo in the mining area, that is in the rich bushveld igneous complex. We have a northern limb which spans into Mokopane, the eastern limb which is in Sekhukhune area, which is Beggarsford Steel Port area. So our project stems from the historic Olifants River Water Resources Management Development Plan that was talking about addressing social plus the mining or industrial expansion. Within that, we have worked within a model that we call public-private collaboration. That is it's the essence of Triple P, but at a consensus mode, not incorporated. And in it, we agree, the government and the private sector agree to co-create and then to co-implement the project. Within it, the management Decision is based on 50-50 consensus. The implementation is based on the capital 50-50 as well, where the government, as the Deputy Minister said, covers the social component, where it also deals with de-risking the cost of water to the social users, largely covering the indigent users. Then the mining sector, which is the large part of the commercial sector, they cover 50%. That deals with bulk raw component for the processing, but they also support the government by adding into the water that is needed by the people, by supplying to the doorstep community, thereby reducing the burden that the municipality have in terms of infrastructure development. So that is in a nutshell what we do, and I think based on time, I think some of the things we can share with you to share with others.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lukeshri Sunaran, and I'm the CEO of SMEC South Africa. I think we're involved in critical projects in South Africa, the Lesotho Highlands, Polyhali Transfer Tunnel. Our teams also work very, very closely with municipalities trying to reduce non-revenue water as well as wastewater treatment plants. So we play a direct role, I think, in partnering with government to try and unlock finances to try and make these projects happen in South Africa. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Amir Kudimandi. I am the National Director for Public Works Administration. I'm here to share with the audience the strategic reforms regarding the water sector and sanitation project that I'm part of the teams, reform that help the government of Mozambique to boost the mobilization of finance to develop the project in those areas. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Johan Libbe. I'm from the Water Partnerships Office, which is an initiative of the Department of Water and Sanitation, who established the WPO in an attempt to try and bridge the gap between public sector and private sector. So we know municipalities are mandated to provide water and sanitation services. We know municipalities are often constrained when it comes to skills, capacity, expertise, and funding to deliver on this mandate. We know a lot of that capacity and expertise and funding is in the private sector, but we don't have a mechanism to bridge that gap and for the private sector to become involved. So we established to try and bridge that gap. We've established a number of standardized programs where we're trying to standardize approaches, mechanisms, models, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel, and then supporting municipalities to prepare and structure projects that can then attract private sector participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan. I'm going to start with you. A big round of applause for Johan as well. Thank you. Johan, I'll start with you. Allow me to operate on the presumption that public budgets remain insufficient. Which alternatives of financing models can genuinely deliver water infrastructure at scale?
Yeah, I think we've heard a lot today about money is not the problem. So there's lots of funding, and then maybe we should be a bit more specific. There's a lot of capital available in the market to invest into water and sanitation infrastructure. The moment you talk to private investors or the private sector, they want their money back. So their money isn't a grant, it's not for free. So we need to, and that's I think where we're often struggling, is to identify revenue streams that can support an investment in water and sanitation infrastructure. Water is often a social commodity, and it doesn't always generate these revenue streams that can attract and allow these investments to happen. So that's part of the bankability that we all talk about, is how do we secure these revenue streams? And we don't always have that from user-paid services and tariffs that generate that revenue. So that's part of the whole initiative of identifying different instruments, mechanisms, and structures that can attract investment that we can allow us to invest and unlock these water and sanitation projects. So I'm going to give a couple of examples of initiatives that we are working on at the moment. I don't know if some of you may be aware of the Cape Water Bond that was recently launched to try and do some catchment restoration, where a significant amount of funding was unlocked to clear alien invasive plants, which will allow more runoff to reach our dams and increase that security of water. So that's a very interesting and an innovative mechanism, because there isn't a real revenue stream that can support those types of projects. But through outcome-based funding, we were able to secure and launch that bond instrument. And what we're working on at the moment is to see, can we replicate that across other catchments and establish a national program that will allow us to do that. Linked to that and using the same mechanism, we're also working on a sanitation bond and a sanitation fund to try and also support non-revenue generating sanitation projects. If we talk about sanitation to informal settlements, to schools, again, there's no real revenue stream that can support those projects. But if we use the same mechanism through an outcome-based bond, we can potentially support the larger scale rollout of alternative and new sanitation solutions to these types of projects. Also a sanitation fund where we want to attract corporate social investment. How is that in a fund that can support the longer term operation and maintenance of some of these projects? We're also working on guarantee instruments. Private sector often raises municipal credit risk when they want to engage or have to engage with municipalities. And we're working on guarantee instruments to try and see if we can support and unlock and cover some of those risks. In many cases, as I've mentioned, also no revenue streams from user pay, people paying for services. So potentially also to look at grant mechanisms that can support these types of projects. So I think all in all, part of the bankability of projects, we're also working on project bond programs where we can potentially put a number of triple P projects together that can then go to market on a bond program type of basis, or smaller projects through debt platforms that we are exploring. So I think a lot of work being done in this space to try and create more instruments, make projects more bankable, and allow us to attract more funding into this space.
Thank you. Dr. Myers, did you want to add on that? Are you good? You kind of seem to be nodding quite a lot. I think you have something you wish to share. The mic is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think in being involved in trying to get some of these projects to bankability, one of the key issues that we've experienced is to prove a reliable revenue stream and to link that to appropriate funding models. And I think if one can get a wider suite of potential funding mechanisms, it will definitely improve the bankability and the rate at which these perceived bankable projects can actually get to bankability. Because there are many opportunities in the country, but they seem to get stuck at the bankability phase.
So bankability gets capital to the project, and then engineering must ensure that the asset gets to perform. I'll come to you, Lokashri, and ask, in your experience and your level of exposure, what is the biggest engineering or project preparation weakness currently undermining water infrastructure investment?
I would say that projects need to be planned properly, and you really need to look at the municipalities and how they put together project plans, because often those project plans are not supported. They're not backed up by credible preparation. So, lots of times you have to look at the balance sheet of a municipality. And the balance sheet is often where it fails, because you have to look at projects that can self-sustain itself. You have to look at ways in which it can fund. Lots of the investors will not invest if they do not see this coming back. So a good example would be like the project partnership between Mfuleni municipality and where Rand Water came in, because they had a stronger balance sheet to actually attract that financing and to show credibility. So often you see that while there is billings and there are tariffs, those tariffs are sometimes not cost reflective. They're not sufficient to put sufficient money back into the system for maintenance, for rehabilitation, and that's where the plans fall short. In fact, not getting enough money to support capital and operational expenditure. So it's important sometimes not just for public sector funding, but also for private sector funding, and also public partnerships as well as private partnerships to come on board.
But it could also be argued on the side of the municipalities, and I'm happy you've made reference to the municipalities that you've mentioned. There is a reality that we are faced with as a country, and that is that of the high unemployment rate, which impacts the ability for the municipalities to generate revenue. Yet those very same communities that are unable to generate the much needed revenue, it doesn't diminish their need for these services. What then becomes the plan for those communities? And we seem to be getting more and more and more of them. If ultimately the decision to finance or to support rests on the balance sheet, what happens to that municipality that does not have the means to boast an impressive balance sheet?
I believe the municipalities must also plan, so there's a lot of revenue that comes from municipal taxpayers as well as grants, and using those grants to actually look at repairing, restoring infrastructure, because we heard about the losses that we suffer. So every liter of water that we can save, that we don't have to treat, transport, is a liter that we can use in the future. So it's more about also having an operational plan that looks after not just capital investment, but also operational and climate sustainability, I would say, all in one. So you have to look at your budgeting, make sure that you're budgeting sufficient for each one of them, and motivating. I think government will also support municipalities if they have a stronger business case in terms of the distribution of revenue.
Thank you. Sekgomotso, I'm going to come to you quickly. Just following on what she's just raised now, would you say we are investing way too much in new infrastructure while neglecting the assets that we already have?
Thank you very much. It looks like you are a prophet, because I think that is one of the things that really has been bothering me. We, like you say, if we try to put money into new project and we do not look into some of the project that we have left halfway through or we've never implemented, it doesn't help us. But also we forgot to look into what are the root causes of why the projects didn't finish. And some of them is because of your systematic issues, let's say intergovernmental systems. Yesterday, the CEO of Mineral Council talked about when you go to one government, you sometimes are sent from one department to the other. And I think that itself has made a lot of investors, to lose energy in trying to do the projects. And some of the projects end up not being done. Secondly, the skill set within the municipality. We have not invested much into making sure that we have capable people in the municipalities. And where we have capable people, we don't have capable leaders or their bosses, if I have to put it blunt. So the strong technical people, they get frustrated and they leave. So then you find that most of the projects that have gained traction start losing traction, because when you lose skill, that project might be only known by that skilled person that you have. Then compounding to this as well is the essence of the governmental system not addressing the essence of regulatory permits. And I think some of them is what also deterred or maybe made the funders, to lose confidence in terms of assisting to finish some projects. So some projects were not adequately planned, were not adequately priced. So when looking into the requirements to get the permits, you realize that at the end of receiving the permits, your budget has run out. And when you wait for the next, cycle of budget, the costs have escalated. So those projects are left, and then we come with excitement of new projects in trying to cover for the failure, which is really a problem. So we need to try to look into the root cause of what makes those projects not complete. And I think use the new innovative way of finding funding in terms of making sure that we finish those projects and we link the new projects. And I will argue by saying, and the Deputy Minister addressed it well, we don't have water resources issues. How much of the water that we have has been allocated, through water use license, but is trapped in the system, is not going? Then later we complain that we don't have water. Then secondly, how much of, lesson about the water losses have we incorporated in the system? Because we're talking percentages, when you say 40%, 47% of water loss, what do you mean? People are looking at that and it looks less, but translate that into amount, into rents. You will start to see how wasteful we are. When we're dealing with one of the ministerial oversight, the Limpopo produced a report that shows the water losses. We took those percentages and the volumes and turned it into rents. In a year, they translate to over 2 billion that we are losing while we are not recovering. So you can see that we are putting ourselves in a system and a trap that really, if we continue with it, we're going to even have new projects coming to join the list of the other projects that are failed. And I think we need to take stock and try to look into what are the causes, what do we do to get those projects. Before we think about other projects, we do not stop there, but we must look into how they supplement the one that we're completing so that at least we're addressing the whole water balance from source to tap, ensuring that industry benefits and then the social people and the marginalized are also serviced.
Thank you. I guess it goes without saying that the pressure on existing and new infrastructure would definitely become even greater in countries confronting significant climate risk. And whilst we all know that no country is exempted from climate risk, but I'm going to come to you, Mr. Dimande. Mozambique has experienced quite a lot recently in terms of climate risk. Now, if you look at the Kurumana and the Greater Maputo water supply system, it gives us, in my view at least, a useful example of infrastructure that is responding to the needs of a growing urban economy. What lessons from the Kurumana should shape Africa's next generation of water infrastructure?
Thank you. If you allow me, I will start with sharing some development that the government have announced recently. The Council of Ministers approved the water security strategy called Compact por Águas. It's a 10 years program, 2026-2036. The compact was launched at presidential level, and in this year, that pays an honest published financial gap with a proposed build institutional architecture to close it. The core argument to carry through every answer, capital does not flow to confusion, money flow architectures. And in 2024, the government approved the law number 9 that separated for the first time capital mobilization throughout the public fund, asset ownership and the PPP conceding throughout the public institute, and service operation throughout 10 provincial companies and independent regulation. That separation is precisely what financial markets and climate funds require as an and dry condition, and it is why 3 instruments with no precedent in the sectors are now formally accessible. This compact also include a coordinator unit that lead the funding mobilization in support to the public funding and report to the minister. And here what changed? The law gave us functional separation, public fund, public institutes that own assets and sole conceding entities for PPPs. The 10 provincial operation companies run the service, each with its financial standing PEF, and the regulators that regulate independently. Regarding the question that you address regarding the strategic water resource to supporting the economic growth, the compact treats water as a strategic economic asset. The water, food, energy nexus is priced in multiple post-dam investment, not treated as an externality. Protection and growth are reconciled institutionally. We have the entities that manage basins and raw water licensing. The regulators protect consumers independently. The investment program aligns with the development corridors, so water flows the economy and enable it. This is what I can say regarding the question that you addressed to me regarding this matter. Thank you.
Thank you,
much.
Mr. Timande. Deputy Minister Mahlobo, I'm going to come with you this one. It's a bit of a soft and a hard. Soft in that, of course, as a political head, you have a responsibility to the nation and to obviously take care of the indigent and those who are struggling to make ends meet. How do we make, having listened to your address and His Excellency's address and some of the comments that are coming from the platform, how do we make water infrastructure financially sustainable but whilst protecting affordability?
Thank you so much. One of the things that we should avoid is our ability to think at the right level within the context called sustainability, which is your planet, your profits, and people. One of the mistakes that people normally do, we normally think in silos, and we don't look at the environment and the terrain. You know, one of the biggest issues when you look at financing, everybody who wants to do financing, they'll want you to get money to be returned. We made a lot of examples we've made. But the governments in the main, they've been able that if you go off budget, whether you use private sector, blended finance, whatever mechanism you do, they will ask you guarantees. Will I get my money? And South African government is well renowned on the position of protecting the social component, which is people. They've always been free basic water. Yeah. Currently on free basic water, the volumes are not the same, but from a financing point of view, you go to the equitable share. For free basic water, we give about 890 rands per household. And when you look at free basic sanitation, which is the effluent, is about 560, and it's not adequate. That's one component you look at. But if we are going to lose certain things, for an example, the point you raised, you know one of the first things people are going to do if they're going to give you money, profit is profit, that's what they do. And normally business is not going to take a risk unless there's guarantees. One of the things that when you look at our reforms, there's something called traditional financing. In other words, from a governance point of view, you must be transparent, have an institutional mechanism. That's why reforms around traditional finance, because it will be grants, it will be subsidies, it will be the sale of water that looks there. And then immediately you can be able to unpack the others. That's how it looks like. You know, one of the mistakes we make is that going forward, the price of water in South Africa and electricity has increased over the last probably 15 years to close to 1,000%. That's what has happened. And people are going to tell you, the expert, to say, no, but this price is not cost reflective. And the poor is going to tell you that this thing is becoming more expensive. How do you find the balance? The balance is to get the economies to work. Get the economy to work, and why President was addressing earlier on, he said the foundation to unlock the economy is infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. That you develop it in a particular way. I thought, let me just probably raise the point in response to your question. But my appeal is that when we go to the thinking ability, let's be able to decipher and see what are the linkages between economy, environment, social, and security, and then you know where you can be able to do trade-offs. Life is always have been about trade-offs.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Coming to you now, His Excellency Mutuane, if you could unlock only one intervention over the next 5 years to strengthen water security and economic growth, what would it be? Just one.
Thank you. It would be what was my submission. Work through water systems beyond
The regions.
borders and into specific catchment areas and conserve and maximize water in those areas.
Thank you, His Excellency. We have indeed ran out of time as we had started devastatingly late. However, I had made a promise that I would enable you, my esteemed guests in the room, to have a say in asking some questions before we wrap up. By show of hands, you can raise your hands and let us know. You introduce yourself and the institution that you represent, and you can then pose your question or comments to the panelists. There's a hand on the extreme right. If you were to raise your hand again, sir, just so, thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I stand on a protocol already observed. I'm Jacobus Jacobs from City of Windhoek Infrastructure Planning and Development Section. What I feel very strongly about looking at sustainable water infrastructure is that the focus should not necessarily just be on water infrastructure. If you create a project, it was mentioned earlier that we have, let's say, municipalities where there's high unemployment rates that impacts the bankability of these projects. So the projects, in my view, should not just be focused on just water or the loss of water specifically. It should be holistically planned along with economic development, human settlements, because unemployment is also a human resource that investors look for in terms of economic development opportunities, employment, the cost of employment, and so forth. So one needs to package projects that where water or the project is an enabler, but it should be broadened so that your job creation is also uplifted to make these projects bankable.
Thank you. Comments? I saw a hand this side. Yes, there's a hand this side. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mine is just a short question. DM, when do you envision the independent water regulator to be instituted in the country? And as a follow-up to that, will you, through your department, be privatizing the water by having an independent water producer program in that regard? Thank you.
Okay, there are two hands to the right. Okay, the hands have since disappeared, or my age is catching up with me. I'm beginning to see visions. DM, perhaps you can respond to the question.
No, thank you so much. I was lucky. I was here in Cape Town looking at the idea of independent economic regulators. And I can assure you that the idea that the state becomes a referee and a player in terms of governance is an issue that we've agreed that it can't proceed. But when the idea came through, there was a mischief where certain people were saying, no, your department is looking at the value chain in terms of water use charges, developmental charge, bulk, but someone was doing the charging on the retail. They never wanted to be regulated. Then we decided to start, we had an old business plan, we've reviewed it, we're going through the legislation, but we've already have something called quasi-independent economic regulator. And I must mention it, it's an economic regulator, it's about pricing. The very same way we've done with NERSA in terms of energy regulation. And we do have the team that is there over the last cycles, the last two, they actually made an input to manage this, but we are proceeding. The idea around the independent water producers, they've always been an issue. That's why I've been an advocate. No boundaries, no ideology, no dialectics when you deal with water. Let's just get it to people. There are those who are opposing it. But if, for an example, the last time South Africa required about 400 billion just to deal with these issues that drop reports are indicating, it was more than 5-7 years ago. And if you look at the present value of that value at the time, it's more than R1 trillion. You go to Johannesburg, you go to it, they need billions and billions just to replace those 12,000 kilometers pipeline, 1,700 and so forth. We have tried to introduce it, to bring private sector at risk. We have actually said you can build your own dam, we give you the license, but if you are going to build your own dam, you need to sort out the offtake. Because nobody is going to actually allow you to actually give you the money to build a dam, have an offtake. We have went out in terms of our own processes to say all the coastal cities, independent water producer in terms of the desalination technologies around using seawater, there's an uptake. The idea also of the introduction in the wastewater system of introducing independent people that can be able to do water reclamation, reuse, management of this thing like a circular economy. You produce electricity and then you have issues of producing fertilizers. That's what we're actually recommending, because the minister from Lesotho, he's correct. Treasury will never be able to fund the gap we have. International, I told you the gap is $7 trillion US. In Africa, $30 billion US per annum. In South Africa, is more than R1 trillion. Just to deal with the existing assets, you bring them to functionality of reliability. That idea is open and many people have applied, but very funny ideas. I know that Johan and the team, they are doing assessment, but there is too much opposition to these changes.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. I don't think there are any other hands now, so what I will do for the purposes of time, if any of the panelists feel that there's something compelling that they wish to leave before we close, and now is the time. I don't desire to place anyone on the spot, But right here, there we go. I knew it. If you could kindly pass the microphone this side. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Myers.
Chair, I would like to respond to the question on the right-hand side. So I agree with you, what you stated, and I think one should always remember that water is a value chain. As soon as you are not linking all the links in the chain, you are building a failed system. And that does not only apply to the flow of water and the technical links between the systems, but also the value or the money in the value chain. And also the socio-economic benefits that you can derive from that value chain. So on most of our projects, we actually, apart from the technical team, we also have a socio-economic team that looks at the opportunities in terms of SMME development, local economic participation, and a whole lot of other things. So and there are many examples and lessons learned across the continent where pipelines have been built through communities without even linking or providing a potable water offtake to those communities, and they were left stranded without potable water. It's actually hard to think that it happened, but it is true. So our engineers normally, and I'm also one, don't consider these softer issues and the socio-economic aspects, but it is actually quite important. And then, Chair, allow me just to another point that I think needs to be brought across. One of the key issues in our country at the moment is lack of leadership and lack of maintenance. And that's why most systems fail. And people have nice words to express that, but that is the hard reality. And one of the easiest ways to understand your own system and to understand where the systems are failing and where the maintenance teams and the operations teams are not doing what they're supposed to do is to start monitoring these systems through digital interventions. On many of the projects that we've implemented, we have seen how municipal managers' eyes actually opened. They, for the first time, realized how their own water system works. And for the first time, they realized that the plant manager was actually telling them lies for 10 years. And they can now see for themselves what's happening in their own system. And the CFO did hide all the non-revenue water losses, and he was not aware of that. So that is really something that I also think as an investment in the country should be made to improve our understanding of the problem and also improving in understanding how we're going to fix the problem, because we have a massive problem. Let's not understate that. Just to put it in context, if you can reduce the 50% water losses or non-revenue water in the country, you can reduce the water tariffs by half.
That's a good number, and that's a good statistic, and I guess it just speaks to the incapacitation of municipalities, and of course these issues impacting communities directly in local government being right at the cold face of it. There should really be a call for the capacitation of those who are entrusted with this responsibility at local government. Ladies and gentlemen, this now brings us to a close. It is unfortunate, as I've said, we have indeed run out of time. I had a whole lot more questions that I would have liked for us to interrogate, but I also have to take into consideration that it is a school night. Some of you have to go home now and read for your little ones. If not the little ones, maybe read for yourselves. I now wish to call upon you to please give one big round of applause and a round of appreciation to our Honorable Neo Machatse Mutiene, the Deputy Minister David Mahlobo, and our esteemed panelists. Thank you so much for your time. Those of you who wish to engage with them, they have given me a solemn promise that they shall avail themselves, even though they still have to rush home and to read for their little ones or to read for themselves. And a big thank you to you as well. Thank you for your time and thank you for your engagement.